Today is May Day, the first day of the month when workers' rights are celebrated in demonstrations all around the globe. Joining us now to discuss the significance of this day, Amira Barger. Thank you so much for joining us here, Professor.
Thank you so much for having me. It's a pleasure.
So how did May 1st become known as this International Day for Workers?
Well, May Day in America originated from the 8-hour workday movement in 19th century Chicago, what became known as the Haymarket Affair in 1886. Actually, there was a peaceful protest in support of workers' rights to move from a 16-hour workday to an 8-hour workday. That was the largest demand of the day. And during that time, a bomb was thrown that threw the peaceful protest into chaos and violence and led to several deaths of both civilians and police officers. And that became a symbol for the labor movement struggle for fair treatment and sparked the establishment of International Workers' Day, celebrated on May 1st globally, though we don't formally recognize it as a federal holiday here in the United States. But that's where it began.
And we do recognize Labor Day, though, as a federal holiday for workers' rights. How come May Day doesn't get that same love?
Well, here in the U.S., we celebrate Labor Day in September, distinct from the rest of the world on these May Day celebrations. And that's largely due to the historical and political reasons of the time back in that day and age. In particular, in the 60s, there were political concerns by leaders at the time around May Day or Labor Day's association with socialist and communist movements. And that had ideological implications for the United States during the Cold War era. And so the United States government established Labor Day in September. So both the U.S. and Canada, we celebrate Labor Day in September for that reason, historically.
And so how is this day, how it's celebrated or honored or recognized, changed since 1886 until now?
You know, I think that May Day's historical ties to workers' rights and solidarity have more and more in today's day and age intersected with some of the protests against war and international impacts that we're seeing even today across the city, across Oakland and San Francisco. Today, we're seeing protests that are aligned with the pro-Palestinian movement, for example. And we saw that back in the 60s as well, opposing the Vietnam War, for example, advocating for peace on a global scale. And a lot of that is because organizers and collaborators of the day between labor unions and peace organizations recognize the impact of international happenings and even the impact of war on workers' rights and livelihoods. So it's really become a symbol of advocacy, social justice, and solidarity for a common experience that all of us as laborers, as workers, have across the globe.
So traditional May Day gatherings, there's sometimes a May Day pole dance where there's like the ribbons and people walk around. How did that come to be part of this?
The original celebration of May Day goes back to European holidays marking the first day of spring. And so that's part of how we came to some of these celebrations with the May Day pole and marking the, the beginning of spring in this time of the year.
Cal State East Bay Professor Amira Barger, thank you so much for joining us so we can learn a little bit more about May Day. Appreciate your time.
Thank you so much.
In San Francisco, Mayor London